In every neighborhood, there exists an unspoken power. Not the police, not the government, but a small group of individuals who hold absolute control over the little things that make life either peaceful or unbearable. The Homeowners Association, or HOA. They enforce the rules, dictate what's acceptable, collect the fees, and manage the well-being of the community. But what happens when the leader of such an organization isn't who they claim to be? What happens when the person meant to uphold fairness and order is hiding something sinister? In Maplewood Estates, a seemingly perfect suburban neighborhood, one such revelation would shake the community to its core. For 5 years, Richard Thompson ruled over Maplewood Estates with an iron grip. As the HOA president, he was known for his strict enforcement of the rules. If a mailbox was even an inch taller than the regulation height, expect a violation notice. If a lawn was slightly overgrown, fines would arrive at your doorstep before you had a chance to mow it. Richard ensured that the neighborhood looked pristine at all times, and many residents saw him as a necessary force to maintain order. But behind the smiles and neatly ironed suits, Richard harbored a secret that no one suspected. And then, one day, he was gone. No explanation, no farewell, just an abrupt email sent to the community. Effective immediately, I am resigning as HOA president. Please do not contact me regarding this matter. And with that, he vanished. The resignation should have brought relief to some, especially those who had suffered from Richard's oppressive rule. But for one resident, Sarah Mitchell, the resignation only raised suspicions. Sarah had lived in Maplewood Estates for over a decade, and she had clashed with Richard on more than one occasion. Unlike many others, Sarah didn't just accept rules blindly, she questioned them. And Richard Thompson's sudden disappearance didn't sit well with her. Something about it felt off. Why would a man who relished control suddenly abandon his post without warning? Curiosity got the best of her. Sarah started her investigation by digging into Richard's past, or at least what little she knew about him. But that was the first red flag. No one really knew where Richard had come from. He had arrived in Maplewood Estates about 5 years ago and seamlessly taken over the HOA presidency. There was no previous address on record, no relatives, no known employment history beyond property management. It was as if he had appeared out of thin air. Determined to uncover the truth, Sarah took to the internet. She scoured public records, local news archives, and even reached out to neighboring towns. Then, after hours of research, she found something chilling, a name change. Richard Thompson wasn't his real name. He had legally changed it 5 years ago, just before moving into Maplewood Estates. But that was just the beginning. A deeper dive led her to a newspaper article from a small town nearly 200 miles away. The headline read, "Former Accountant Vanishes After HOA Embezzlement Scandal." Sarah's heart pounded as she read the details. A man named Jonathan Reeves had been the president of an HOA in a similar upscale neighborhood. He had raised HOA fees under the pretense of community improvements, issued hefty fines to homeowners for frivolous reasons, and collected thousands of dollars in penalties. Then, just as some homeowners began questioning the financials, he disappeared, along with the HOA's funds. The article included a grainy photograph of Jonathan Reeves. Despite the slightly different hairstyle and the addition of glasses, there was no doubt in Sarah's mind. Richard Thompson was Jonathan Reeves. He had simply changed his name and moved to a new town to repeat his scheme. Now, everything made sense. The sudden resignation, the unexplained disappearance, the constant fines that seemed designed to generate money rather than enforce real rules. Sarah knew she had to act fast. If Richard, or rather Jonathan, was capable of scamming one HOA, what was stopping him from doing it again elsewhere? Sarah immediately brought her findings to the HOA board. At first, they were skeptical. Richard had always appeared professional and well-spoken. He had built trust over the years. But when Sarah presented the evidence, the name change records, the newspaper article, the financial discrepancies, there was no denying it. The board launched an internal audit, and what they found was even worse than they imagined. Thousands of dollars were missing from the HOA funds. Money that was supposed to go toward neighborhood maintenance had been funneled into private accounts. Fake invoices had been submitted for services that were never rendered. The system had been rigged from the start, and Richard had been lining his pockets the entire time. The police were called, and an investigation was launched. But by the time they arrived at Richard's home, it was empty. He had vanished once again, just like before. His bank accounts had been drained, his phone disconnected, and his belongings stripped down to the essentials. He had planned this escape meticulously. In the weeks that followed, Maplewood Estates tried to recover. A new HOA president was elected, and strict financial transparency measures were put in place to ensure this never happened again. But the shadow of Richard Thompson or Jonathan Reeves still loomed over the community. People whispered about his whereabouts, wondering if he had assumed a new identity somewhere else. And then, months later, a resident from a nearby town reached out to Sarah. They had seen her online post about the scandal and had something shocking to share. Their HOA had just appointed a new president, someone who looked eerily familiar. He went by the name Robert Tanner, but the moment Sarah saw the picture, she knew. He was back, and somewhere, another neighborhood was about to become his next target. So, if your HOA president suddenly resigns without explanation, maybe, just maybe, you should start asking questions.